Good evening everybody and welcome to Brain Unchained. It is the weekly live emotional awareness discussion. I am still waiting for my guest to arrive this evening. Hopefully he won't be too long. If he joins me, I haven't had communication back this afternoon, but I only messaged him a couple of hours. This evening we should be joined by Jonathan Troen. Jonathan joined me in week 20 and we talked about the importance of self-love. And the conversation was so amazing and we got so involved in this that we said it was getting very philosophical towards the end, and we were so excited about this discussion and how the discussion was going with all this philosophical talk towards the end of our last discussion that we said we want to come back and finish the conversation. So fingers crossed Jonathan will join me shortly online and we will have that discussion. Meanwhile, bear with me, I've just got a couple of changes to make on the background of the screen, which you won't see until I move my image. And I'm just going to very briefly introduce, share screen here. I'm just going to very briefly introduce what we had last time. If I can spread that one out, share screen, this one. There we go. Now you'll see me in double, but that's fine. That's how it's meant to be. So this is Jonathan. We had the discussion. I'm going to put the link in the chat as well. So if anybody wants to go back and watch this one, all about the importance of self-love, the importance of self-love, then please do go and watch that. So that'll be on replay. That is on replay. So that was week 20. Today is week 30. It says 29 if you're watching it on YouTube. That's my error. But an hour before the show I couldn't update it, so I'll have to do that in hindsight, so it will say number 30 afterwards. So there we go. Apologies to everybody that I have missed a couple of shows lately as well. I did have to cancel last week, so again not feeling well. Much better now. I finally got to the root of whatever it was that was causing a lot of my problems the last month. I've cut out what was causing the problem and I am feeling a lot better. Thank you very much, and thank you for all the kind support and comments that I had from people last week when I cancelled at short notice. So, as usual, as I say, like a rubber ball, I bounce. That means you slam me down on the floor, life throws a curveball, things go wrong. Let me take this back off for a minute. Stop share, there we go. And things go wrong and life takes a bit of a downward curve. But like a rubber ball, eventually it's going to hit the floor and you're going to bounce. And when you bounce, you come back up again and everything's okay. So that's how life feels at times, just like bouncing around like a rubber ball. That's no reflection on weight issues, but if Jonathan's on here, he'll tell me off for saying that because that's negative self-talk. So it's absolutely looking forward to this. Oh, come on, John, I hope he comes and joins me because I have been so excited about this conversation for tonight. I really have. So yeah, there's lots of stuff I've been looking up. Before we go into that, I also want to update everybody that I am doing a 12-week personal development challenge because I'm aware that there are people who come and watch these regularly, the weekly live discussion, but there are also people who may want something a little bit different, something a bit shorter and sharper and more constructive. These conversations are amazing and they bring open topics and really open up topics from all around the world in all kinds of areas that are all interlinked with emotional well-being and physical well-being, but emotional well-being importantly as well. But to do something a little bit differently, I've now started a new playlist, which is the 12-week personal development challenge. So you can find that on the channel in playlists. So if you want to go and hit the subscribe and the like button below, and then make sure you click the little bell with notifications. It will tell you every time I upload a new video. So Monday to Friday every week, and again because I wasn't well last week, I did week 1, missed a week, carrying on with week 2 from this week. Have I done today's? Yes, I have done today's. I had to think for a minute there. So today's is up. So every single day there is going to be a different tip or trick or strategy for helping with personal development. These are not necessarily ones that are from my book, which is Brain Unchained here. So if anybody hasn't seen this, so the strategies are not necessarily ones directly from the book. However, because the book Brain Unchained underpins all personal development, because it's about the human emotional cycle, which is in diagram form here, and understanding that diagram and understanding the emotional cycle helps you to understand a lot more about a lot of other personal development tips, tricks and strategies as well. So I will bring little bits of that into the challenge as we go along, but only the bits needed as and when. Rather than throw you the whole book strategy in a 12-week, that's not going to happen. So that's going to go into a separate course another time. But for now, this 12-week personal development challenge is going up in anything up to a 10-minute video. And it has a strategy to it in itself. So we have Monday's mindful motivation, Tuesday's task, Wednesday's wisdom, thank you Thursday, and feel good Fridays. And every week throughout the 12 weeks, that means you'll get a collection of 12 mindfulness videos, a collection of 12 tasks that you can do to help challenge yourself and push your comfort zone a little bit further each and every day. Wednesday wisdoms are about bringing in some outside knowledge about personal development. Perhaps looking at some of the work of an ancient philosopher. It might be looking at a particular keyword that really is important in the process of learning about yourself. There's lots and lots of different things I can bring in. It could be something scientific, so there's various different bits I'll bring in and build up a little collection of 12 little golden nuggets about wisdom to do with emotional awareness and feeling good. Thank you Thursday is another strategy which is about growing gratitudes. But gratitudes are, it's easy to say be grateful for something. And we grow up being, so we'll be grateful for that. There's children in Africa who haven't got that much food for dinner and things like this. And we were grown up with these sayings like, oh, be grateful for this and be grateful you've got that. But that's not quite the way it brings about a sense of gratitude. It's learning different methods for growing gratitudes. Gratitudes for yourself, what you've got, for the people around you, for the challenges you've got ahead of you, for things you've had in the past. So there is a number of different tips, tricks and strategies for growing those gratitudes so that you can then, at the end of this, pick and choose the ones that suit you best. And it might be that you need a different one day to another. It depends on the circumstances and scenarios. So that's the Thank You Thursday, all about gratitudes, but we like to find a way to say thank you for being who we are. And then Friday is Feel Good Friday. And Feel Good Friday it's similar to the gratitudes, but it's more of an awareness. It's about opening up your awareness, similar to the mindfulness. So it's a blend between. But between them, between these 5 strategies, and repeat that through the 12 weeks, that will give you an amazing toolbox of 60 tips, tricks and strategies for personal development, along with a few little nuggets from Brain Unchained to support the learning along the way. And this is all entirely free. There is no charge for this whatsoever, and it is all here on YouTube. And if you want to take part in the discussions, you can either comment below on YouTube, or you can go over to Facebook and you can join us in the private group and have a more private discussion there. There's about 275 members in the group at the moment. Not all active. There's a number that are active. It's quite a good number. But there's just a nice number in there for you to be able to come in and just interact and support each other, because one of the great things about personal development is it's always better with company. It's like anything, you know, it's like a good cup of coffee is always better with company, and a good glass of wine or a nice meal is always better with company. And the same with personal development. Sometimes we need space to ourselves, but sometimes we really need the right company. So do come and join us in the group. Do. That's over on Facebook. And again, the link will be below the videos it's certainly below the very first one on the 12-week personal development challenge. So we are 11 minutes in. I still haven't heard from Jonathan. I've messaged him twice to ask him if he's joining me this evening. Fingers crossed he is, but I have a funny feeling, and this has happened before, that it's either had a hold up or a funny feeling that I might be forgotten, but it doesn't matter. It's all about self-love, and I don't take it personally. People have lives to live. So that kind of brings us on to something I can just throw in here. Sometimes we get a sense of rejection. you know, we set things up and you turn up, and like tonight I'm sitting here for a guest talk and I have no guest as yet, and fingers crossed he turns up. But I don't take that as a feeling of rejection, because people do have lives, and sometimes there are distractions, or they just forget something. There could be emergencies, and the way the weather's been around the world this last few weeks, there's no telling what's happened to anybody anywhere. Well, I know he's alive because he's online. It says active now. So I think he's alive. I think he's okay, and that's good. There's that little green dot that says he's been active, or he is active. So fingers crossed he will come online. But I don't take it personally. I don't take it as a rejection. Sorry when you get to watch this on replay, Jonathan. This is not a dig at you or whatever. Absolutely loved having that last conversation. I really want you to come back. But I don't take offence that sometimes people do have distractions. They forget. And then I look at it. One of the great things is look at it in, how can I learn a lesson from that? Maybe the lesson is I should have sent him the link a few hours earlier, or even a day before. Maybe I should have followed up more often. And look at the lessons I can learn about my part in why this happens, and is there something I could have done differently? And that's one of the great things about personal development, is not passing blame. I don't like passing blame to other people for other things. It's a very British culture, a blame culture, and it's something I've grown up with. It's something that I've had around me at school, I've had it around me in jobs, and the British are well known for having this enormous blame culture. And it's a word that I've heard more and more over probably the last 10, 12 years. And it wasn't until I worked for a specific company where they had a completely different culture around things going wrong, and everybody tried, instead of passing the blame. I think I've got to tell you, this is hilarious. I'm just meandering through conversation at the moment until we get somewhere. But I sat in a board meeting with a load of managers. I was just taking notes, and something had happened, and it was something that needed to be addressed. And all of a sudden, one of the managers said, "Oh, that was my fault. I need to take responsibility for that, and I should have done that, or made sure this was done, or that these workers knew that." And this manager tried to take the blame. And I was like, okay, that's unusual. It's not something I was familiar with in all the places I'd worked, and the societies that, cultures that I'd been around. And then the next person around the table went, no, it was my fault. I should have done this. I should have done that. And this conversation bounced around the table, around 5 or 6 managers, with every single one of them trying to take the blame, or take the blame for a part of what happened. And I was gobsmacked to sit there and observe this conversation. Now, some people might be watching this and thinking, well, that's the way it should be done. And I'm like, yeah, now I've seen it, that is the way it should be done. And it's amazing to sit and watch it. It's amazing to be part of it. However, that is not what I'd grown up around. It's not what I'd experienced in my work life up to that point. I'd had the kind of experiences that were very different, where a manager had been out of the office all day, and everything was spick and span in the office. And I'm in the show. We worked in a car showroom, and I was on reception, answering calls, dealing with customers, keeping things clean in the showroom. And he came back at the end of the day, having been out all day, and he was angry. But he was so angry that he was one of those people that would use that anger to come in and lay blame on anything, whether it was a single tiny speck of stain on the coffee machine, or a single fingerprint on a sign along the counter. It was like it would have to be absolutely immaculate, or he would come in and shout at anything. He was angry, and he came in today and we'd got everything perfect, and there was nothing to lay blame on, and he didn't know how to vent that. So then he went through a door at the far end to the private part of the garage, where there's some stairs up to a canteen at the top. And his assistant came down to me a few minutes later, and she, oh bless her face, she looked at me, she says, "I'm really sorry," she said, "but I have to tell you this because I've been told to tell you," right? So he then got angry and shouted at her and told her to come and tell me something. This is not how managerial processes should work and not how company culture should be. And we're all about positive personal development here. It's all part of the story and it's all relevant. But anyway, she leaned over the counter and said, "I'm really sorry, I have to tell you this. But the boss said, can you please dust the Hoover because it's got dust all over it." And it was behind a private door, well away from the clients. And at that point, we both looked at each other, and thankfully he was out of the showroom and upstairs by then. We both burst out laughing. We were crying with laughter because we both knew what had happened. It's just that everything was so perfect. It was the only thing that he could find to place this blame culture on. It was his culture was when he was angry to place blame on something and anything, even though he'd just walked in. But to say that the only thing he could find was in a cupboard that the Hoover was dusty and it needed dusting, it just made us laugh at how desperately bad it had got that day for him. And it's just a moment that you just don't forget it when you've been there. But yeah, discreetly, her and I, we had a really good laugh to the point tears were running down her eyes. So having worked with cultures on that end, with managers who shout, and also actually that same manager, I worked for him for 11 months and there were 7 people in the company. The day I left that company, he asked my name. He came up, shook my hand, thanked me for doing a good job, and then asked me, "What's your name?" How do you think that made me feel? Yeah, wasn't in his favour. So that's the kind of culture that I do all of this for. And although my book, Brain Unchained, is aimed at teenagers, I will work with adults of all ages as well, because that's the kind of culture I want us to break in this country, to move away from and to grow from. Learn from it, not just squash it and crush it and say it's disgusting, but to grow and learn from it. And that's what storytelling is all about. So if we're going from a Hoover being dusty in a cupboard being the only complaint a manager could shout about, to being around this boardroom, and if you're popping in and out, please do catch this on replay, boardroom where I'd then got these managers all trying to take the blame for something that was a major contract and a major engineering job, lives at risk, major contracts at risk for millions of pounds, and it was unbelievable to then sit here on this completely opposite end of the scale and hear them all trying to take their part of responsibility. So when I said to one of them at the end, "What was going on there?" I said, "I've never seen that before." And he said, "Well, in Norway, where they were from," he said, "in Norway," he said, "our culture," and they were aware of the culture difference probably more than I was, they said, "our culture is that everybody should learn from whatever the incident or accident was. Our culture is that everybody should see if there's something they can do to prevent it happening next time. Everybody has a look to see if there's some ownership they can take, some change they can make, some responsibility that they can take, so that whatever it is that happened doesn't happen again." And that was how that culture in that company continued for the entire 7 years that I worked for them. And that is the best job I've had in my life, when I had managers like that. Even, and this is another funny story. So that's about all I can do tonight is, without my guest, is throw funny stories at you. Another story, it was not long after I'd worked at this company, about 4 or 5 months. It was raining, and yes, rain's a big topic this week. It was raining quite heavily, and I had to pop outside one building and into another. And I opened a door for somebody else, and I stepped back a little bit to let them through the door because I'd their arms full of laptops and bits. And I fell off a step. I not only fell off the step, but I fell onto my bum, rolled back onto the pavement. And when I stood up again, my trousers had soaked the rain out of the pavement, so it was a perfectly wet pavement with a dry bum print right where I'd landed. And I just, again, burst out laughing. I went back into the main shop, the main office, and I was crying with laughter. I hadn't hurt myself at all. I'd fell backwards and I'd fell right onto my back, but I hadn't hurt myself. However, it just made me laugh so much at what I'd done. And I wouldn't have thought anything more of it, because again, this is another culture about the blame or avoidance. So there's two sides to this. One is passing the blame, and the other one is avoiding taking the blame. So when you're on the other end of that, and in this country, the amount of times I hear that people have had accidents and it's not put in accident books, it's not reported, so many different things that just get avoided and they get pushed away, overlooked, and it's like places where they reckon they've not had an accident in 4 years or something. They don't have an accident book, and I know of a place that someone I know works at that reckons they've never had an accident in 4 years. I can guarantee the work environment they're in, they've had accidents, but they're denying all of them. I actually know of an accident that's happened within that company, but it was never reported, it was never put in the first aid book, and it was denied. And this is a culture I've seen, again, part of this blame culture. One side, there's two sides to everything. One side is passing the blame, and the other side is refusing to take the blame. Complete opposite to this other company where nobody passed the blame, but everybody wanted to take the blame, and it worked so much better because nobody had a disagreement in terms of clashing and falling out. They all ended up being an amazing team instead, a really powerful, dynamic team that could overcome challenges I hadn't even dreamed of. So anyway, here we are in this company. I'd fallen off this step, gave it not a second thought because of the first aid culture we're used to in this country. You know, if you cut your finger, well, just stick a plaster on it. Health and safety say you're supposed to put a new one in the box, but nobody ever does. Nobody fills a format, blah, blah, blah. So here I am, I'd fallen over. I'd not even hurt myself. And about an hour later, when the other guy who I'd opened the door for finished his meeting, he came back and went, right, I need to fill in a form. And I said, why? I didn't get hurt. Like, you know, because this is what I'd been taught. If you don't get hurt, you don't fill out a form. If you cut your finger and you are hurt, you still don't fill out a form. You only seem to do that for major things. And he went, no. He said, it was an incident. It was a near miss and you could have got hurt. So we are filling out a form. So I said, but it just seems a bit excessive. And he said, no. He said, because it's important to always learn from everything to prevent it from happening to somebody else in the future. And I thought, that's a really good point. And then it turned out that the reason that he said we want to prevent other people from doing it was actually he'd done the same earlier the same day, which made me laugh even more. But luckily he'd gone sideways and gone into a wall and didn't fall all the way over, whereas I'd fallen onto my back onto the pavement, quite wet. So luckily it was the end of the day, I only had about half an hour to go before I go home. Yeah, not comfortable. But anyway, so this whole culture around blame it's really important. And so we filled out the accident form and he looked at the regulations for the step. He actually investigated it as a proper incident report. And it turned out the step was not built to regulation size. Like the amount of space between the door and the edge of the step was one thing. And the second one was that the pavement, the step and the surrounding pavement was of the same material. So out of your peripheral vision looking down, you couldn't tell the difference between the step and the ground because it was the same colour, the same material. So it was easy to not see it when you're moving around. And I thought that makes sense. And now they couldn't change the size of the step because of the building where it was in public, and they couldn't expand it out onto a public footpath. So what they did was to put some yellow high-vis tape around the edge of that step to make it visible. Nobody ever fell off it again. Now that's the difference between we could have left that and let another 10 people fall off there and only fill out a form the day somebody actually landed and broke their arm or leg or something, or we could have done what we did, took responsibility. And that manager that day had some major challenges to deal with, dealing with work offshore, with engineering, but he took the time out to come and talk to me about a minor incident of falling off a step, because he said it could have still resulted in an injury, and it all goes to targets for the company. But the important thing was they saw everybody's safety as important. Now, compared to the manager who'd come in and shouted at me about the Hoover being dusty, and then asking me my name the day I was leaving the company, compared to these other managers who are trying to take responsibility and actually dealing with even minor things and putting the importance of talking to me ahead of a major building contract offshore. How important do you think that made me feel then? And that was a huge difference, and we can look at that from the employee's point of view quite easily, in how, you know, you can imagine how you would have felt in each of those situations. Very secure in one, very annoyed in the other, although we did have a good laugh about the Hoover. At the same time, being asked my name the day I leave a company was extremely insulting, and I had no respect for that man after that. So, you know, if you're working for a company, just being aware of these things as well also helps you with your part and being a part of the team. We've gone completely off the topic of self-love tonight, and I still haven't heard back from Jonathan, so I think he must have got times muddled up. It's possible, because he should be calling in from America, so it's possible we've got a time juggle. So not to worry, not to worry. So anyway, sometimes it's not until we understand things like this that we can understand if we can care about other people that much better, the way these managers cared about me, as opposed to the way the earlier manager had treated me with complete disrespect because he was angry about something that happened outside the office. How that makes me feel. So let me lead that in now. We've gone nearly half an hour. Let me lead that in a bit about the self-love for tonight. If other people can make us feel so differently, just two different stories there, if they can make us feel so different by the way they talk to us, and they're both quite small incidences in the scale of things, it's not like long-term relationships, these are just like one day with a step and one day with a Hoover or asking the name. How do you think it also affects us when we talk to ourselves and we tell ourselves we are useless, we're no good, we can't do that? You know, if you tried something once and you made a fool of yourself for 5 minutes and you don't ever try it again for the rest of your life, who's being fooled? You know, we don't want to give up on something because we had the inability to do something once. Try again, love yourself and say, I can do it, I will do it. And don't beat yourself up. Don't call yourself useless. Don't say negative things. Be positive. Nurture yourself. Encourage yourself and say positive things. Now, did you notice there how I said the same 3 things, but I said them 2 different ways? Don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. It's the same thing, but how we even say it even has a big impact on how we receive it. So when we say be kind to yourself, we really do mean it, because just the simplicity of turning that simple sentence around even has a big impact on how we view ourselves. And the more we love ourselves, the more other people can love us as well. And it's really important. There's so much that I really wanted to get this conversation quite philosophical tonight, and it's very difficult to sort of, it's not very difficult, it's it's not the same as having a full-on conversation with another person when I'm just trying to throw things out there and just talk to a camera for an hour, and I know you're there, and hi, and I love you all, and I know you're there, or you'll be watching on replay, and there are people popping in and out, but you know, please say hi if you're popping in, you know, or watching on replay. Please drop comments in. Love having feedback, I love having comments, because it's all kindness. At the end of the day, taking the time to pay somebody a comment or a compliment, or say anything, you know, on a YouTube video, a Facebook comment, LinkedIn, anything, it's a form of kindness in itself, and it can really make somebody's day when you put the right comments. So that's another way, you know. We all want to go on Facebook and see that people put nice things about us, or on YouTube, but do we do it for ourselves? And that's the important thing. So we need to be kinder to ourselves, love ourselves more, and as I demonstrated with the little sentences there, think about how you say these things as well. So instead of beating yourself up, be kind to yourself. be loving and open with yourself. And there are lots of ways you can do that. Maybe make a list. A really good thing I've done recently is, I won't show you them all, but because they're quite personal, but I've got one on the front that says breathe. I've got some little index cards here, and on here I have like actions like breathe, so I can pick these up at any point, take the clip off, I just hold them together, and I can shuffle them and pull one out. And I've got one that says affirmations. Actually, I'm quite happy to show that one. Affirmations. I can do it. I can be liked. I can be trusted. I can be loved. I can do it. I can. So they're all different affirmations, like I have or I am. Some more ones. I love. So then there's quotes. So I haven't got, actually it's probably not the right one. Oh, I heard this one recently. I think it was on a video. Elevation comes from separation. And it might not mean a lot to you, but it meant something to me, so I wrote it down. So this is what you do. Just fill these up with quotes, affirmations, actions, messages that people have told you, you know, little words. If somebody said something to you and it was something kind or a compliment and you really liked it, write it down. So anytime I'm feeling a bit stressed or anxious or like I need to pick me up, I pick this up, I can shuffle them round, pick one out. Gratitude is another one. And a quote from Lao Tzu, I like this one. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. By Lao Tzu, ancient Chinese philosopher. I do love philosophy in terms of that it's all about asking questions, never stopping thinking that there is a way. It's the ultimate form of positivity, in always thinking there must be an answer out there somewhere. And just because everybody said there isn't, you don't give up. And that's kind of what got me where I am in the first place, is the philosophy of never giving up. There must be an answer somewhere. Just because nobody's found the right answer for me yet doesn't mean the right answer doesn't exist. I have to keep searching for it. And that was what took me to the point of discovering the strategy that's in the book and being able to develop that strategy in there by keep asking myself, and then eventually, instead of somebody else giving me answers, I came up with my own answers. But it was a very helpful set of answers that are now helping other people too. So all this self-love is really important in terms of raising your energy, being open, because it's only when you start to relieve all that stress, all that anxiety, and actually start to take yourself into that place of being peaceful and happier. So even if you're not happy, joyful, laughing, because that's like the time when you're crying, tears running down your street, you know, wide open, flip-top lid laughing, that's a real joyful happiness. But there's this happiness that sits within a more peaceful place that, I was fingers crossed then, but it's not, something else. There's happiness that sits in a more peaceful place where, like right now, I'm happy. I don't have to be laughing my head off and tears running down my face and running around screaming, yelling with friends and having fun. I can be happy in a peaceful place too. And that is the place where the most amazing things come from in our minds. And that was where I wanted to take this conversation with Jonathan tonight. I did. Maybe we still will yet, but that was where I wanted to take this conversation, is that our mind is connected to so much more. Now, we know about the 5 senses. We have hearing, sight, smell, taste and touch. But then there is so much more to us than that. We have so many other senses. Right? We also feel hot and cold. Without even having to touch anything, we can feel hot and cold. So that's a sense of temperature. There is, how can I put it? There is a sense of doom. You know, there's a sense of something's about to happen. So we have these innate, like, warnings within us. It's almost like, what's the word? I've been using it all week. Initiative, not initiative. It's really funny. The minute I want to use a really good word, it has gone out of my head. Now I'm really laughing because this happens to me every time. So intuition, there we go, intuition. I've started almost there. So we have this innate intuition that we can sometimes sense there is an answer somewhere, but we just can't quite tap into it. Or we sense that something is about to happen. Or, you know, you walk into a room and there are two people there and you instantly have a sense of whether they're getting along or whether they've just had an argument, or whether they've not even introduced themselves to each other. They're like two strangers in a room. You know, you walk into a meeting room or a waiting room at a bus stop or something, or a bus stop. You instantly have this sense of who's together and who's not, without even really using anything other than your sight. But your sight is you see things, but it's all this other intuition that's going on. You can see somebody walking down the road and have an intuition about them, about somebody's running down the road. I mean, okay, are they running because they're late for the bus, or are they running because they're out for a jog? And your intuition is the one that kicks in and tells you the difference. Not always just what they're wearing, but the difference between the two, because the person in the gym wear could be going to get the bus to go to the gym. Who knows? So you tend to have that intuition that tells you lots of different things in life, and it all ties in with this self-love and intuition about ourselves as well. So hi, we've got something to say. Every time I go to say hi to somebody, they're gone again. So we've got lots of people popping in and out tonight, but nobody's staying. Hopefully they'll catch us on the replay, because there's normally a few people who watch live. I know what it is. The Olympics are on, aren't they? That's what it is. I bet everybody's watching the Olympics tonight. It's on replay. Catch it later. So, where was I? Intuition is really powerful. And for me, one of the most powerful examples I had of intuition was when I said to my mum, when my son was just 10 weeks old, I said it's almost as if he's autistic. Because I hadn't been able to make proper eye contact with my son. And he was just looking all around the room, but never at me. And for a baby that normally bonds with a mother by looking at the mother during feeding times, this just wasn't happening. And for 6 weeks, I'd not been able to look him in the eye. So it wasn't like a one-off thing. It had been like constant for weeks. So I said, it's almost as if he's autistic. Now, I had no idea about the whole spectrum of autism. I knew about full-on autism, and I knew about being normal, I knew about Down syndrome, and I knew about some other things, but I didn't know about Asperger's and this whole autistic spectrum in between. To me, it was a very black and white world back then. This was pre-internet days. We were only, I think it was about a year or two before internet became a household thing. And so, you know, it was purely an intuition statement that came off the top of my head without planning it. I hadn't really thought about it. But I said it just came out. And it wasn't until 7 years later that I learned about Asperger's. And when somebody gave me some documents about Asperger's and I read them, it was like, oh, and instantly my head went straight back and remembered that conversation. And that conversation was well over 25 years ago, nearly 28 years ago. I'm trying to think how old he is now. Anyway, yeah, it was a long time ago. A long time ago. So instantly I'd heard about that, my head went straight back and remembered that thing that I'd said purely on intuition. And look how close I was, that my son at 8 years old was then diagnosed with Asperger's. And although he's doing amazingly well today and he's overcome a lot of the challenges, Asperger's is something you have for life. But most people nowadays wouldn't even know it in him, because he's learned to adapt and make changes to himself. He's learning, and his personal development. Now, if he could go from being a suicidal teenager who was really, really struggling with life, through to a young man who is doing really well in finding jobs, you know, he's doing well with the interviews now. He has had a couple of job changes this last year through the pandemic. He's waiting on response to another interview at the moment. And he has this completely new outlook on life, and he's a lot kinder to himself. And that was the big difference was with him. Instead of beating himself up, hating himself who he was, trying to prove that he didn't have Asperger's, and thinking that was the way to fit in, when actually all it did was make him stand out more, made him more angry, more aggressive, more distanced from the world. It was actually that journey of learning to accept who he was and embrace who he was is the very beginnings of self-love. So instead of saying, nobody wants me, I've got Asperger's, nobody wants to employ me, nobody wants to be with me, nobody wants to be friends with me, instead he got to a point where he could say, do you know what, I have Asperger's, but that's who I am. People still love me for who I am. People still want to employ me for who I am. People want to be with me for who I am. And therefore I can love myself for who I am. And he had to almost do this acceptance journey in reverse. But it's so true that it's only when you can be yourself and truly love yourself for who you are that a lot of other people can accept you for who you are too. If you're still not sure about that, let me turn that back to front and rephrase that the other way round, right? Try now and imagine this from the outside point of view. And you're trying to be friends with somebody or love somebody who doesn't love themselves, and they can't be who they are, and they're always trying to be something else and somebody else. How can you love somebody else when they don't know who they are? You can't. If they don't know who they're portraying themselves to be, then how can you love the genuine version of them? And another one, and do you know what, just for fun, because Jonathan hasn't turned up, another one I might share in a minute if I can find it, just for a giggle. I'm going to find something. It's Olympics. Let me tie something in with this. On the other hand, this is extreme version of this, is there is, oh, I'm on the wrong bit. Let me try on here. Right. There is this thing where we love television, and we love comedy television, right? And actors who, and people in the limelight who truly embrace who they are some of the ones that have the most amazing videos out there. They're the most well loved, right? And when you truly embrace who you are, it makes such a difference. There will always be somebody who doesn't like everybody, or there will always be, you know, people who don't like who you are, but that's not a reflection on who you are. That's a reflection on who they are, and the fact that everybody is so different. Like I said earlier, I don't take offence, you know, that I'm sitting here talking on my own. It is my personal development challenge to do this 52-week video challenge, although I have missed a couple through illness, but I will catch them up and we will get to 52. So it might not be 52 weeks in a row now, but we'll get to 52 weeks of video. And this is who I am. People love me or they don't. And I don't take offence if they don't. Not everybody is everybody's cup of tea. But some people do something completely and totally unexpected to be who they are. Now, if I was to tell you, how would you feel if you was a man who wanted to do gymnastics in a girl's leotard and do a girl's routine? And would you think that person might think, oh, nobody's going to accept me for being like that. Nobody's going to take me seriously like that. Nobody's going to love me for being like that. So imagine a man doing his gymnastics routine for the Olympics or competition, but instead of doing a men's routine, he wants to do a woman's routine in a woman's leotard. Let me show you this video. I'm going to share screen first, otherwise it'll start playing without. And I am going to play because I'm just in that mood tonight. We're just rolling with the punches. Here we go. You may have seen this, you may not, but this is Paul Hunt. Just like even the demure look there. Would you really have imagined this? This is like me doing my first ever video review online, I suppose. I keep trying to do new things. I love that, how he makes that look. I'm going to do some pauses here. I love that. It's incredible how he made that look so difficult to get on that beam, but actually it is difficult to get on that beam. There's no way in this world I could do that, but it was the way he did it so delicately. I'm going to have to replay that bit, that tiny little bit, because that was hilarious. Watch that. I just loved how he made it look so difficult and yet did it with absolute perfection at the same time as a comedy routine. Do you imagine the strength in his arms to do that? I'm hoping you can hear this play okay. Oh, imagine going around that square beam like that. That looks painful. Followed by delicacy. Little girl bit there. He just said how hard he has to work to look bad. Oh, this makes me laugh every time I watch it. How he didn't fall off there altogether, I don't know. Oh, he has. Oh my goodness. I think that is the only time in the world I've ever seen somebody do an elegant pose upside down on the bar. And then we go into a little perfect few movements. That's an incredibly difficult move from the shoulders, but he just makes it look completely unelegant with his legs. But it just goes to show how people love you. Hear him clapping now. This is somebody who's embraced himself for who he really is. Not that this is who he is all the time. But it's not always about being perfect. It's about having fun. Oh, setting up for something. Oh, and a really good move there. Mm. Even the commentators are having fun. And I love this again. This is only an extra minute or so. It's like goes the easy way and makes it look very difficult, and then does it the difficult way and makes it look easy. I love that. Just that change in expectations is what makes us laugh. It's like building up the anxiety of the move here, like this is going to be painful. And again, I don't know how he doesn't fall off altogether. It's just so creative as a routine, it is unbelievable. Hey! I can't stop it now. Why it won't let me stop it. There we go. So yes, that is absolutely hilarious. Paul Hunt. He has a series of routines out there. He's done them on the floor, he's done them on the bar, he's done them on the parallel bars, and he's actually made a bit of a sort of a sideline career. Stop sharing there again for a minute. He's made a bit of a sideline career of his gymnastics by being this incredibly strong, masculine, muscly gymnast who's then just accepted that there's this whole humorous side to him and embracing that. And instead of just keeping it hidden and having a bit of a joke in the background, he's taken it public and people love it. And to me, that is just like the ultimate form of self-love, is accepting who you are, who you really are, and other people will love you. And you can see there, people absolutely loved it. They were clapping, they were cheering, the commentators were loving it. And so if you're worried about making a fool of yourself in public, nobody is going to ask you to do that, to create self-love. However, if that's the extent you want to take it to, absolutely be my guest. And I think growing up, some of the most loved characters out there were the ones who were a little bit quirky, the ones that were a little bit different, and they really were who they wanted to be, especially when it comes to the pop arena, pop music. It's those singers and artists out there who can really be themselves rather than trying to fit into the media stereotype. It's the ones that, instead of fitting in, the ones that stand out and be themselves, that have really, really made the biggest career. And Lady Gaga has got to be top of that list in my mind. Wow, she really did stand out to fit in. And I know there was, to an extent, a lot of insecurity around that. Initially, when she couldn't embrace her look, she wanted to hide behind those wigs and masks. But at the same time, that whole outfit, the rest of it, the singing, the acting, the dancing, that was her embracing who she really was on the inside, even if she wasn't showing it through the mask. So Lady Gaga is a really, really good example for self-love, in that it took her a while to develop that enough to take that mask off. But even with that mask on, she was able to embrace who she was internally. And she'd had a bad relationship, and I believe, I can't remember the exact quote, but her partner had told her that she'd never amount to anything. She'd never be a big singer, she'd never make it to fame. And she told him, you wait, one day you won't even be able to go and get a cup of coffee without seeing my name in lights or on a TV screen somewhere, or put the radio on without hearing me. Because she was that confident in herself. But it was that lack of self-confidence on her looks on the other side that didn't match up, but somehow she still had an element of, like Paul Hunt there, being able to get on that stage and perform and really be who she was in the moment of the act. And it's almost like an escapism in a sense when you're doing that. But yeah, she's done absolutely inspirational, the work she's done, the singing she's done. And there's so many out there like that, and in all areas of life. So yes, self-love, absolutely. Also, when I did the 12-week challenge, today's was week 2, Tuesday's task, and I did talk a bit about doing it again. I get these brain fogs. I've been a lot better this week, but this is pretty much why I've missed a couple. I'd had some serious problems over the last month with headaches, and I even got rushed to A&E thinking the doctor thought I'd got a blood clot on the brain, and it turned out not to be. It was a reaction to some supplements I was taking, and so it got to a point where it was quite worrying at one point, but it's okay, and it took a while for the effects of them to wear off, so I'm still keep trying to get rid of this brain fog, but definitely a lot better than I was, definitely. So anyway, I've forgotten what I was saying now. I diverged, but anyway. So self-love, today's video, Tuesday's task. Oh, I only did this morning. Last week's was take a selfie, the Tuesday's task, and it was all about the emotions of taking a photograph of yourself. For example, like, I'm trying to think, it was about 7 years ago, I knew that I wanted to run my own business one day in the next few years. And I knew that to do so I would have to get comfortable with being on camera. And at that point I wouldn't even take a photograph of myself. So I tried this one day and thought, I've got to get used to this. And I'd gone away with work, I remember it, I'd gone away with work for a while, and I sat in this hotel room where it was quiet, I was on my own, and I took a selfie and I looked at it and I sat and I cried. And I couldn't show it to anybody. And I tried taking another one and I didn't feel any better, and it took me about another year, 6 months to a year, before I'd take any more. And it was about me not accepting myself for who I am. So who I am now, nothing's changed in who I am, how I look. It was just how I view myself. Now, at the same time, other people around me who love me for who I am, for what I look like. But somehow I couldn't do that for myself back then. I had low self-esteem, I had low confidence. So when I talk about Lady Gaga, as I've just mentioned, and her being on stage with her mask, I can understand that to a degree, in that you can have all this inner confidence about who you are as a person, but then you can have all this exterior insecurity about how you look as a person, or about how other people view you. So self-love is about taking that all the way through, from how you are inside and personal development, right through to how you see yourself on the outside as well. And that doesn't necessarily mean going on a journey to change your body unless it is absolutely critical for your health. It is about going on a journey to accept your body, your looks, your hair. You know, I know these days everybody changes the hair colour at the drop of a hat and you never know what to see next. But I've not been one for that. I did try dyeing my hair once, and to be honest, I just wasn't that taken with it for very long, and I just went back to my original colour. So that's not for me, but other people absolutely love that. And that's part of embracing their personality, is to show their true colours, and they do that through changing the hair colour, through lots of bright colourful makeup and you know, sort of cheerful, big branded, bold clothes. Big chunky shoes is another one, you know, big bold shoes or pointy shoes or shiny shoes or trainers. You know, we all portray different bits of our personality through our exterior as well. So it's about bringing all of that together and being able to accept every part of yourself from inside through to the outside, and also in how you relate to other people, and looking at every aspect of who you are and saying, I actually like that. And if you see a part of yourself you don't like, that you're not confident with, you're not happy with, you think it's pushing other people away, that's time to analyse that and start looking at how you can change your dialogue around it. So going back over the last hour's conversation, whether it is how you beat yourself up, turning that round to being kind to yourself. Instead of saying negative things about yourself, pay compliments to yourself and say them out loud. Use them as affirmations as well. Like, yes, I am amazing. I'm great. You know, you can throw in, I've gone blank off the top of my head. There's hundreds of them you can choose. There's loads of affirmations videos on YouTube, loads of self-care tips. There's lots. And Jonathan Troen, who should be on tonight, I will still put the link in, because I'm a kind person. I will still put the link into his website about self-love, because he is the expert on that. My expertise is more about emotional awareness and understanding the emotions, whereas his is then about developing that into self-love. So if anybody really likes the idea of working with me to understand the core emotions, I don't normally promote this on the show that much, but Brain Unchained, this is available on Amazon worldwide, and it is about raising emotional awareness for teenagers and young adults. But as somebody said to me last week, she said, you've actually put a emotional awareness book, which is a self-help book. It's like an exercise book, because it has got exercises in it all the way through. So it's, that's right, no, I do it. There's a self-help book which has got exercises in it. It's for teenagers, it's for young adults, and it is for parents. So it ties them all in together in one book, and she's been reading this book and she said really have captured it all in one. And it's filled with all sorts of stories, analogies. There's parent toolbox. Anything that's in dark grey at the end of every section is a parent toolbox. And it helps you to see something from the teenager's point of view, and then have that conversation with them from the parent's point of view. So the book really gives you both sides of that conversation to help you grow and learn from it. So I'm really hoping after tonight's conversations about how I had those conversations with managers, or those experiences from the Dusty Hoover through to the boardroom of managers who were all trying to take responsibility for something, and the time I fell off the step and the manager took time out of a busy schedule to see to something that seemed quite trivial because he saw it as important, even though I didn't think it was, but he did. And how that makes us feel. It's how we can take all of that and all of that self-love and start to use that to create a ripple effect by passing that on to others. So how I learnt from that Norwegian company I worked for, I use a lot of that still today to still grow my self-love, you know, my appreciation for who I am, and also to help other people. It helps my family, and that was a phenomenal experience. So there's a lot of influence from that is not necessarily written into the book, but a lot of the influence has helped me to put this book into this whole new culture of how parents and teenagers can use all of this conversation from tonight to realise that the conversation between parents and teenagers can leave a teenager with the same experiences as I had from those two different managers, and how I felt so differently, with full respect for one and not for the other. And as a parent, I'm sure we would all love it if our children respected us and paid due note to the fact that we are great parents and we do all the right things. And I know parenting is extremely difficult, and especially when you have a very depressed, anxious, stressed, moody, angry teenager, parenting is the most difficult of all. But with all of these techniques and the strategies I've talked about tonight, about setting the example of self-love, that teaches them, because even as teenagers, they grow up and they learn from people around them. And as we know as toddlers learn from adults around them, but as teenagers they're still learning from adults around them, and it has a massive influence on them. Think back to the managers you might have had when you were leaving school, and the first jobs you had, and how they treated you, or colleagues and supervisors. How did they make you feel? And those that valued you, those that haven't. And bear in mind that as an adult we can do that to ourselves, and as a parent we can do that to our children and teenagers. And if you are a manager, a leader, supervisor or an influencer out there, think about how you're doing that for your employees and your clients as well. Very much how that manager did not treat me respectfully. That has an impact on the staff, and the staff have an impact on the clients. So very much looking forward to coming back next week. But thank you so much. Remember, this is available on Amazon. I'll put the link to that in the chat as well. And anybody who is interested in working with me, I will also put the link to my website, which is kreeve.co.uk. My name's on the bar here, but .co.uk on the end. So if anybody's interested in working with me on the personal development side here, then absolutely get in touch. I do one-to-one mentoring. And even though Jonathan hasn't joined me tonight, I will put the link to him. He is based in America, and if anybody's interested specifically in the self-love revolution, I think he calls it, finally remembered it at the end, self-love revolution, and also he does a lot of work with yoga. So if anybody's interested in that over there, do get in touch with Jonathan as well. And maybe one day I might get to finish that really philosophical conversation with him, because I was so looking forward to that tonight. But not to mind. That means, and this is the power of positive thinking, we still have it to look forward to. Rather than having to say farewell, we have it still to look forward to. But thank you so much tonight for anybody who has sat and watched through and been patient with me talking on my own. I know it's not the same. It can be quite tedious sometimes listening to just one voice for an hour. That's what I love about the conversation. It keeps it flowing. But thank you so much to anybody who's sat and watched through tonight. And please let me know if you've watched the replay, because that will now be available on YouTube within a few minutes as a replay as well. Let me know what you think and catch it from the beginning. But thank you ever so much for popping in, and have an amazing week. And I'll see you again next week. We have Graham Frost next week. No, sorry, that's the week after. Next week I have Michelle Greenwell, and she will be bringing a story about body movement and kinesiology, which is going to be interesting, and how that all ties in. There's lots to do with that can tell about emotional states and energy blockages. And then the following week we have Graham Frost with heart-shaped decisions. So 2 exciting speakers coming up. And then I've got a couple of weeks I've still got to fill out. We're getting to the end of the speaker list, so I've got to go on a hunt for some more exciting speakers and some new topics, and bring you something even different than what we've had before. That's my challenge at the moment, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you to everybody. See you all again next Tuesday with Michelle Greenwell, and all about kinesiology and body energy. See you then. Hugs, and I'll get it right in a minute. Hugs and healing to you all. See you next time.